You've probably heard many times at this point about the detriments of excessive social media usage, from its impact on your attention span to the constant craving for instant gratification. Now, whilst many of the benefits of quitting social media are very well documented, this video won't be treading that familiar territory. Instead, I wanted to get beyond the normal discussion on this topic, to shed light on one of the most sinister effects that excessive social media consumption has on us. This is the issue of how social media usage is eroding our individual authenticity and originality of thought, and essentially turning us into a generation of NPCs. Now, for those who don't know, an NPC is a non-playable character. It's one of those characters in video games that are entirely programmed by the computer and just go around saying pre-scripted dialogue lines. The idea behind it becoming a meme is that many people who excessively consume mainstream media just start parroting the establishment opinions and become just like NPCs. If you've ever interacted with someone online only to realize that they're simply parroting the exact opinions of a particular content creator, to the point that you can predict accurately other things that they'll say and believe on completely different topics, then you've basically come into contact with a quintessential NPC. Now, ideological thinking and echo chambers to this degree of extremity is also discussed very thoroughly, and it's a familiar point to most of the viewers watching this, I'm sure. But I'm going to argue in this video that even if we avoid this extreme and remain critical and rational when we're engaging with online content, excessive consumption of it is still having a very negative effect on our authenticity, our creativity, and our overall originality as individual humans. Now, before I get to the main discussion, reflect on this. Consider your most strongly held beliefs, the ones you have the most confidence in. It can be about really any topic. Consider your core values as well as your overarching worldview, and ask yourself, how many of these did you genuinely come up with as a result of your own original creative thoughts based on your own self-reflection, versus how many were ideas that you just heard from other people, they resonated with you, and so you incorporated them into your web of beliefs and overall worldview. Furthermore, have you ever found yourself engaged in a discussion, making a point or a counter-argument, only to realize that you were simply echoing ideas that you had picked up elsewhere? Now, my point isn't to say that we should never ever do this. After all, some ideas just simply are worth repeating. But modern digital habits have elevated this to a common practice in discussions, especially on trending topics in political, social, or philosophical discourse. This is where the NPC meme becomes so usefully descriptive. When two people engage in interaction like this, just parroting ideas at one another, we've essentially reduced meaningful discourse to just predictable, programmed exchanges of dialogue. So how does social media usage actually affect any of this? Well, years ago, I actually deleted all of my social media accounts except for YouTube. Now, whilst this was definitely a positive step, I pretty much just became a YouTube addict and replaced the time I spent scrolling on the other social media platforms with binge watching videos on YouTube. It wasn't until recently this year that I actually realized what a mistake this was. I think for most of us, we can understand easily why spending hours scrolling through TikTok content, or browsing half-naked girls on Instagram, or just consuming pointless entertainment for excessive periods of time is detrimental. But many people come to YouTube every day for insightful and informative content on topics like politics, philosophy, religion, science, lifestyle, self-improvement, general life advice. It intuitively seems like this sort of content forms a counterexample to the general rule of quitting social media, which many people are aware of. And I think, just like myself, this leads many people to replace their old social media habits with consuming a lot of this kind of productive, high-value content on YouTube. Now, as I mentioned, this was actually me to a T for many years. I deleted my Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat accounts, but would spend hours every day listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, and following debates on topics that interested me. Like I think many people do, I really enjoyed amassing knowledge on these topics and being able to discuss them and debate them competently. I even felt like I was often being productive by consuming this content, since it was informative and at least I wasn't just idly consuming entertainment. But I've since come to believe that even this sort of engagement with high quality content on social media is causing degradation in our authenticity of people, and this was something that I witnessed in myself as I consumed countless hours of this sort of content. So I'm not making this video claiming to have reached some sort of enlightened state of authentic thinking myself. Rather, as Seneca says, I'm talking to you as if I were lying in the same hospital ward about the illness we are both suffering from and passing on some remedies. That being said, I have taken action to massively reduce my content consumption this year and replace it with better habits and activities. I have definitely found that I'm regaining a lot of creativity and originality, and this has significantly enriched my life. So today my goal is to convince you to take a similar path. When you consume content on the internet, whether it's mind-numbing TikTok videos, general entertainment like vlogs, or even high-quality video essays on politics, your brain can easily slip into a comfort zone where it passively absorbs the opinions, ideas, styles of thinking, and arguments of the content creators. Now, obviously in moderation, there's value in listening to the ideas of others, as engaging with a great novel, or listening to a thought-provoking podcast discussion, or reading philosophical literature can be greatly life-enriching. It does become an issue though when our existence just becomes a passive receptacle for the ideas of others, which mostly come in the form of low-quality discourse or junk entertainment anyway. The digital world is rife with constant distraction and instant gratification, so spending our precious spare time on deep reflection is often neglected, as it just doesn't provide the comfort and pleasure that content consumption does. I believe that many of us are spending far too much time in this passive content consumption mode, and that it's eroding the authenticity of our thoughts and personalities. If every day you just passively listen to other people, neither engaging actively with the world, nor thinking and reflecting yourself, then you will inevitably start to absorb their ways of thinking, their ideas, their personality traits, and you'll miss out on cultivating the unique character, worldview, and experience of life that you otherwise could. Now, you might be thinking that what I'm saying doesn't apply to everyone who spends a lot of time consuming content on YouTube. After all, many viewers do engage very critically with the content they consume, deciding for themselves which ideas are well supported and which ones aren't. When they hear these views challenged by an opposing argument that they deem sound, they won't hesitate to update their beliefs accordingly. I myself very much took pride in being this sort of viewer for a long time, always striving to be as rational and objective as possible to end up with the most well-supported worldview. What I realised, however, is that even critical engagement is still a far cry away from being an authentic thinker, and it leaves your originality and creative thought completely undernourished. Whilst it might be true that I was avoiding ideological thinking and accepting my beliefs on the basis of good argument, I was still just taking in the arguments and ideas of other people, never my own, no matter how rigorously I might scrutinise them. Now, what I'm talking about here goes beyond academic beliefs about topics of philosophy, but just as an illustrative example, if I take my experience of studying philosophy at university, I was able to develop somewhat original arguments, but they were still always based on the existing structures and ideas and existing theories of other people, and using patterns of argument to defend them that I had seen elsewhere, even if it was new to apply it to my current topic. Now, even though I wasn't just regurgitating content and I was getting good marks on these essays, I still felt dissatisfied with them. I didn't feel that my work was truly creative or authentic, but rather a soulless extension of existing thought. Reflecting on this made me really realise that I didn't want the majority of my beliefs or worldview to be like this. Our worldview is what informs and drives a lot of our most important decisions, our way of life, our values. And having this be largely formed by consuming content on the internet relegates our own role in shaping it to that of a mere adjudicator. You simply judge which ideas you like and which you don't, but you aren't creating these ideas yourself. This renders the resulting worldview unoriginal and inauthentic, regardless of how sophisticated the arguments supporting it are. Again, we wouldn't have an issue with this if we were just consuming the ideas of others for a small portion of our day. But social media usage, especially YouTube, is only on the rise amongst young people and is currently extremely high. The more time you spend consuming content, the greater the extent to which you'll be programmed and allow others to influence your thoughts. I firmly believe that humans flourish when they're actively engaging with the world, creating and producing, rather than reflecting all day like the stereotypical philosopher. But living a passive life on the internet where you absorb the thoughts of other people rather than engaging in your own reflections is even worse. Take a fairly typical day for many young people in the modern era. After waking up early for work, the first conscious action you make is reaching for your phone. You shove the bright screen in front of your half-asleep, bleary eyes and immediately start scratching that itch for dopamine, scrolling through social media or watching a YouTube video. After getting ready, you have your first meal of the day and watch a YouTube video while you're eating it. The commute to work or university is spent either listening to a podcast or listening to music. And then during the day at work, of course, you have to work. But then perhaps you're periodically checking social media or using it on your lunch break. Following the drive home, perhaps listening to more podcasts or music, you relax into an evening spent watching Netflix, watching YouTube videos, watching live streams, that kind of thing, and still scrolling social media on your phone all the while. Your day then concludes with you laying in bed, sleepily scrolling through your social media or watching a last YouTube video, meaning that your first and last actions of the day were spent on your phone. Now, of course, I understand that many young people don't have routines that look like this and live radically different to this. I'm not suggesting that this is universal or normal for even a majority of people. The routine just described is, of course, a fairly extreme example, but it's still undeniably fairly common. For teenagers, this is actually even worse, with 62% of teenagers in the US spending more than 4 hours per day on social media, and that's a purely self-reported figure. Since people have a tendency to downplay their bad habits and remain ignorant of the extent of these vices, I would speculate that it's actually even higher than this. If we were just watching a YouTube video a day or engaging with media every now and again, of course there's no problem with having the ideas of other people enter your brain. But I think when it's this excessive, we can intuitively see that there might be a problem with how we're being programmed. Not only does this exert massive influence on our thoughts and opinions, but it conditions what we deem as worthy topics to have thoughts and opinions about in the first place. This effect is reminiscent of that meme about the person who always supports the current thing, and the opposite persona, the person who always rejects the current thing. The former refers to people who seem to absorb mainstream opinion like sponges, and whose personality becomes defined by vehemently supporting the norms and opinions deemed proper by the media and the establishment, aka the current thing. The opposite person defines themselves by dogmatically always rejecting and opposing whatever is popular in the mainstream. What we can observe from both of these groups is that a lot of people are investing a lot of time and emotional energy into issues simply because they were presented to them on social media. Much of the time these things won't even have any bearing on their own lives whatsoever, but they'll still invest so much time and effort opposing and supporting these things. This is a consequence of absorbing so much online content that it effectively programs what they think and care about. Besides creating inauthenticity, excessive consumption of media also renders us extremely susceptible to ideological warfare and manipulation. Those of us born in the digital age have been bombarded from birth with adverts, movies, media that often contain implicit messaging designed to manipulate our thoughts and behaviors to serve the ends of those creating them. This could simply be to influence us to buy a product, but it can also be more nefarious, to subvert and undermine the interests of a population. The influence of these isn't necessarily as straightforward as someone explicitly advocating for an idea, nor are the effects always borne out from persuading you to consciously hold some sort of belief. The messaging may be more subtle, yet still have a profound effect on shaping your unconscious biases, your thought processes, and your values. This sort of brainwashing and ideological warfare will only exacerbate in the future. And the only way to keep your mind free from its influence is to limit your exposure to these massive online networks of media. This is the best way to ensure that your brain doesn't become infected by memes that are designed to manipulate you to suit the ends of others. Good luck using social media to brainwash a farmer living off-grid in rural Kazakhstan. His thoughts, worldview and values are developed by his own active interaction with the world and close community connections. Of course, I should note that there is some irony to me making this video. I'm a content creator and I'm making a video giving my ideas on how you should live. Yet the content of my ideas is that you should not allow content creators to exert so much influence on what you do. But to be clear, although there's irony, there isn't actually any contradiction here. I'm not saying that you should never listen to other people, that you should never accept an idea from someone else, or that you should never watch and listen to YouTube videos. I'm just saying that in the modern era, these things play too significant a role in shaping our thoughts and actions and worldview, and that we should return to something more authentic. You might question what's actually so valuable about the kind of authenticity I'm promoting. What's actually the problem with outsourcing the idea-forming process to others, and then just choosing and adjudicating which we think is the best? Don't we just want to be correct with our beliefs and worldview rather than be creative or authentic? Now, there are many topics on which there's no reason whatsoever to try and come up with your own unique ideas. Health and diet is one domain like this. It's perfectly sufficient to just do your best to rationally adjudicate between the information you're presented to by others. The priority here is just to have correct beliefs about health. And trying to be original or unique or creative is just an irrational desire that could actually get in the way of you being healthy. But when it comes to topics like politics, philosophy, ideas on how to live well, structure one's lifestyle, what career to pursue, what kind of person to be, etc., there usually is either no fact of the matter or the truth in question is inscrutable. Despite that, these sorts of things are the most important for determining who we are as people and the sorts of lives we pursue. And we will feel a lot better about how we relate to the world and our role in it if we feel as though we're acting in accordance with a unique and authentic worldview, as opposed to being drones who only consider the ideas of others. Breaking free from conformity and self-actualizing is something that I think many of us have a strong drive to do. But the digital habits that I've outlined in this video definitely stifle this goal. If your ideas are just served up to you by other people, then they will exert control of your thoughts. And if they exert control of your thoughts, then they influence your behavior and choices. Since your choices and actions end up constituting your life, you can end up outsourcing who you are and what you become to the whims of other people, and even worse, digital algorithms of social media. To break free from this web of social media influence and reclaim status as an authentic individual requires significant resolve to overcome pleasure, comfort, and habit. Personally, I stopped watching YouTube besides for the odd occasion, and I limit my consumption of media in general a lot, and I've deleted pretty much all the other social media apps. Some good replacement habits that you can put into practice include meditation, journaling, writing down your own creative and original thoughts on any topic that interests you, speaking with close friends or family, reading quality literature. I started reading Dostoevsky novels after about a decade of not reading fiction, and I honestly found them very, very life-enriching. I truly believe that our lack of activities like this, combined with our addiction to social media, is hugely limiting many of our potential. With that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.